Howdy, y'all. I saw The Social Network this past week, and I guess before I go any further, I'd have to explain. Right now, you're looking at the trough of a consumed pack of Peeps. Peeps are an Easter candy that basically like marshmallows, but they're covered in a kind of very minute, sugary substance. Sometimes the flavoring matches the coloring, but not often. So, to the film, we start off with Mark Zuckerberg and Rooney Mara. Well, her character isn't named Rooney Mara. I don't remember the actress's name or the character she played. The actress's name is Rooney Mara. Anyway, they're on a date in a bar, and you can tell that Mr. Zuckerberg has some kind of social problems in his understanding of the situation, and he presumes to know more than he actually does, as with some of these intellectual types do. Anyway, he makes a few social faux pas, assuming that his girlfriend is banging other men, and then she breaks up with him. And this is, according to the film, the inspiring moment for Mark Zuckerberg to create an exclusive platform that will entice his ex-girlfriend to try to become a part of it or reconnect with him. Now you have to understand a little bit that Mark Zuckerberg is a strange creature. He's not like you and me. He's not a simple folk. He's somebody who is devious in a way that lacks the common social graces, if you will. So, on this journey, Mark Zuckerberg happens to encounter two Olympian athletes, or future Olympian athletes, the Winklevoss. I don't remember the name, but they talked in a kind of robotic unison back and forth, almost like if I was watching some kind of strange riddle or something being played out before my eyes. And they present to him this idea about an exclusive internet kind of college social scene, because at the time MySpace was the big thing, and that wasn't exclusive at all. And what these boys wanted to do is they wanted to take the exclusive I apologize for my pronunciation, the exclusivity of the club that they were a part of, which I believe was the Phoenix Club. Kind of like the Skull and Bones Club that George Bush belonged to. You know, the club where you sit in the grave and a bunch of old men jack off on you. Yeah, I mean, they are at Harvard or Yale or one of those schools where the elites like to play those kind of disturbing games on one another so that they can call upon the influence when necessary to get certain things done in government and in business. But anyway, these young boys want to transplant their exclusive group and the culture that it creates of desire into the online sphere by requiring a certain college email to get on it. What happens is Mr. Zuckerberg essentially takes that idea and then just actually does it. Where these guys, they just present him to the idea, but they don't really do anything, and they essentially try to set up like a kind of contractual obligation, but nothing follows through because, as you see in the film, Zuckerberg intentionally just sat on the idea while working on his own. So, in the film, it's a little complicated because we're constantly jumping from, as you know, the current time as things happened, but we find out that that's actually in the past. And what's actually happened is that there are multiple lawsuits going on between Mr. Zuckerberg and his best friend, Mr. Spider-Man. I don't remember what his name was. And then Mr. Zuckerberg and the Winklefossies, those two lads. And the Winklefossies, well, in the end, they actually got a lot of money. And that just kind of speaks to the power that money and privilege can buy you in America. Because they didn't, as far as I understand, set up any kind of contractual scenario for Mr. Zuckerberg to actually do any work. And there is evidence to say that Mr. Zuckerberg was already working on one of these ideas on his very own. So the only understanding that I can have is that their money and their position in society won them a court case that legally, as my understanding is as a simple folk, they didn't have grounds to win. And they came out quite handsomely for it. Well, more handsomely than they already were. But the meat of the story is in the dissolution of the friendship between Spider-Man and Zuckerberg. So Spider-Man initially, he puts up the initial founding money. He puts up like about $1,000. But the problem is that as things get rolling along, Mr. Zuckerberg's really doing all the work. And then what happens is that they meet the founder of Napster, played by Justin Timberpond, and he's very, very, very devious. And there's a scene in the beginning that I thought was really well done when they first introduced Mr. Timberpond. He's talking with a woman he had just slept with. And at first, she doubts his authenticity. She believes that he doesn't know anything about her, not even her name. And then he begins to roll off an amazing amount of information about her. And then right after that happens, he clicks on the computer and her, excuse me, I apologize, her Facebook is there. So it calls into question, was he really earnest in his approach with this woman and remembered these things? Or did he happen to look them up on the Facebook and then remember them from that? And it calls the audience to question, what really is an earnest recollection of knowledge anyway? Because he wanted to, appease this woman, to assuage her concerns, and then he was able to do that. I think that scene is incredibly well done. But Mr. Timberpond's character is very disturbing. He has a degree of paranoia. He parties with underage women, and he does drugs with them. But Mr. Zuckerberg is so... Well, it's hard to say that Facebook would be what it is without the help of Mr. Timberpond, because he got them access to Peter Thiel? I'm not sure what his name is, but he was one of the initial early investors that provided a lot of money for the company that they necessarily needed. And the big climactic moment of betrayal is that in the second round of investing, the amount of available stocks increased. So, when the amount of available stocks increased, if you had previously owned 30% of the company's stocks, and if your stocks are not matched to the new amount, you're essentially pushed out of the company. And that's what happens to Spider-Man. And Spider-Man, he throws a punch, almost, at Mr. Timberpond, but then he walks out, and then he sues his best friend. And that's where the climax of the film happens, is Mr. Zuckerberg is alone. He planted stories that ruined his friendships. And in the end, he tells us, well, I apologize, at the beginning, he tells us he wants a good life. He wants to get into an exclusive club for a good life. But the reality is, as the film tells it, is that he just wanted a club to exclude people so that he could make his ex-girlfriend jealous to get her back. Because at the end of the film, he's left with nothing, nobody, not even the hot lawyer assistant is willing to bang his pathetic ass. So he loads up the Facebook and he goes to his ex-girlfriend's page and she's on his platform. And that's gotta be ego-stoking enough if you were a regular folk. But Zuckerberg is a little bit disturbed and he sends her a friend request and he sits there. He asks if he could stay in the office for a little bit longer and he's just refreshing the page, desperately waiting for her to accept his friend request. And we in the audience, we know, they're not getting back together. And if they are, it's not for any kind of romantic means. It's because Rooney Mara character is there for money. So in the way, the film builds itself around this concept of the most motivating aspect in a person's life is emotional. Mark Zuckerberg had an emotional pettiness that he initially blogs and hacks and sets up all this who's hotter programming to pit these women against each other in the same way that the would-be future members of these exclusive programs are pitted against each other. So the film thematically ties itself off very well. I would say it's very good. You should watch The Social Network. Also, Mark Zuckerberg is a disturbed individual. And if you need some laughing material, please look up Mark Zuckerberg Congress Booster Seat. It's a good laugh. Thank you.